Hello everyone, and welcome to another deck video here on the Drawing Scarecrows channel. Today I'm presenting a Naturia deck, which it's a pure build, but it's valid for both the trading card game and for Master Duel. And so if you're wanting to play what I think is probably the best version of Naturia, using kind of only Naturia monsters and themes around those cards, I reckon this is the build for you. Obviously, there's a fair bit of implementation around their signature card, I guess, Naturia Beast, which is your anti-spell killer. So when a spell is activated, send the top two cards from your deck to your graveyard. And currently people are using this a lot in Adamanticators, which is our last video out. You can use whatever it is, Nemesis Keystone, to easily get it out. But this build actually mostly focuses on the main deck Naturia monsters. And in that way, it's also a budget deck for the Master Duel. There's only two ultra rares if you want to run them, which are indeed the Beast and Barkion, which has the same effect but for trap cards. If you're going up against, I don't know, Chainburn, Nurse Refugee, or something like that, you'll want to bring this out instead, probably. But if you're going ultra budget, you might even get away with not using these. But I'd recommend just getting these two ultra rares. Everything else in the deck should be super rare, or basically you can use any kind of link or synchro you'd want that would fit. A generic one that you could play, perhaps, that you have in your collection. Just stick it in here. So the deck itself kind of revolves around two main deck monsters. One being this Bamboo Shoot, which, when it's tribute summoned by tributing a Naturia monster, your opponent cannot activate spell or trap cards. So it's a ridiculous effect. It's got 2,000 attack, and it can lock decks down. I mean, imagine like Sky Striker. I'm sure there are others you can think of, essentially decks that utilize their spells and traps for their power. You can immediately shut them down with this. The second big monster is Naturia Antjaw. This is like Max C, but for your deck. When your opponent special summons a monster, special summon a level 3 or lower Naturia from your deck. And that's not a once per turn, and that's not even you can have two of them on the field and make 2 summons. And so your idea for your first turn is a go first deck. And your idea is to set yourself up for that when your opponent is in their main phase, you'll either have some Antjaws to allow you to kind of protect your field, or you have a Bamboo Shootout and see if you can stun lock your opponent into submission from there. The cards you're wanting to get out with Antjaw, obviously this effect only works when it's normal summoned, and also it's not level 3 or lower. But you can see the majority of the rest of the deck is level 3 or lower, so you can play pretty much anything. Ones to go for are things like this Mosquito. So this has the Marauding Captain style. You have to target another Naturia with attacks, plus your opponent takes battle damage from all attacks, and actually you can end up it's one of the main ways to win is actually having maybe 3 of these Naturias on the field as a result of Antjaw, and then just launching them straight into your opponent's monster. Especially if you've managed to get Bamboo Shoot out, they're not going to be able. They're reliant on monster effects in order to combat that. So yeah, we've got 2 of these in the deck, so you can bring out 1 if you kind of want your opponent to attack you, or you can bring out 2 to lock them in. So the Fruit Fly is one I often play last, so all your opponent's monsters lose attack and defense, and then on your turn you can take one of their monsters if they've got no defense, which can happen if they've dropped 1,500. It's good to have 1 copy of Butterfly out. I think there's no kind of Naturia you can play that offers consistent disruption, so you will often be bracing yourselves for attacks. And this is one way of doing it. However, the better way is with the Stink Bug. So you can send the Stink Bug face up the field to the graveyard to end the battle phase. So that's the one I'm often bringing out. If they're popping off combos, timing Naturia Sunflower well is really nice. You get Tribute It and another Naturia to negate the effects of an effect monster. So if you can time it right, that's a really nice one to shut your opponent down mid-combo. And the last one to guess to mention is Beans. So you know what, turn it can't be destroyed by battle, and there's a little bit of this deck which is themed around protecting your monsters from being destroyed by battle. And if you haven't got access to Bamboo Shoot, you can bring out the Rose Whip, which limits your opponent to just one spell or trap per turn. The last two monsters are your other normal summoners. So Cliff, when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, special summon level 4 Naturia from your deck. So this is useful when going into maybe synchros. So say you've got where's your level 2 synchro tuner, sorry. Whatever, when you're going into something, so you go into this Landoys via a Rose Whip and a Cliff, go into Landoys, and then you get an instant summon out, so you can just immediately fetch an Antjaw or fetch something else. And obviously you've got the Landoys effect that you can send a spell card from your hand to effect to negate a monster effect. You often won't have too many spells in your hand, but you can recycle some of the equip effects, and we'll go into a bit more about why we have these into the deck in a second. But it can be useful. But it's also why the extra deck isn't so essential. And actually, of the cards, I'd say Cliff, even though its effect is nice because it's when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, I'd say it's probably the one that could be removed for, I don't know, another type of Naturia. If you so wanted, that's probably the one I'd be most likely to get rid of. Marin is a really lovely card. It's just a shame that there's no good target for it. So when it's normal to send a Naturia monster from your deck to your graveyard, and often it's kind of difficult to know what to target from it unless you've got either your copy of Trap Trick or your Back to the Front, because then you're going to be wanting to send obviously your Antjaw. So you open with Marin, Foolish Burial, your Antjaw, and then revive it either directly with Back to the Front or with a Trap Trick Back to the Front. And then you've got Antjaw on your opponent's turn, ready for if they make a load of special summons, then you can reply to that. Or if you, I don't know, if you happen to know your opponent's playing 40 trap deck, you know, Paleozoic something, then you can bring out Rose Whip. But more often than not, you'll be going for Antjaw. The other main searcher of the deck is your Naturia Sacred Tree, and I've highlighted Foolish Burial Goods there because in reality you're trying not to activate Naturia Sacred Tree because its effect is just tribute an insect to special summon a plant. You don't really want to do this ever. What you got a bit fuzzy. What you want to be doing is using Foolish Burial Goods to send this directly from deck to your graveyard, and when it's sent, you can add any Naturia card from your deck to your hand except Sacred Tree. We're not running any of the spell and trap support here, even though you could if you wanted to. But this is your main way of getting either your Antjaw or your Bamboo Shoot into your opening hand if you don't have it already. Because we're playing Trap Trick, we can play some of the really good normal traps. So obviously Back to the Front is in here. And then we're also playing this. And shout out to whoever found this. I believe it was Dark Arm Duelist was a video I was looking at their Naturia deck. They had this in there. And yeah, what a great card to combo with Trap Trick. So you can immediately normal summon a Bamboo Shoot on your opponent's turn, which is super useful because obviously getting this out turn 1 is quite difficult, but getting it out on their turn, then you've got yourself set up. And all you need is either any one of these 3 copies or the Trap Trick. The equip cards provide a whole different sort of effects. We're running Raptinus, which when you're at the start of any battle phase, you get to normal summon a monster, so it works a little bit like free range monsters. And it also has a neat effect depending on what position your monster's in. You often, yeah, it depends when you're using that, because often you'll be equipping this to a monster and then normal summoning Bamboo Shoot by tributing that monster. But if you happen to not do that, then you can maybe prevent your Antjaw from being destroyed by battle or something like that, which is super nice. Moon Mirror Shield, obviously we're playing a lot of weak monsters, and so your opponent could be ramming, going into you, boom, trigger trap trick, or boom, trigger arm recall, and you can immediately get that Moon Mirror Shield straight to your monster and boost its attack. And Power of the Guardians, so you'll note that a lot of these things involve, you can often be attacking into your opponent's strong monster, but so say you've got Antjaw, you don't want it to be destroyed. You'd equip Power of the Guardians with it. When an attack is declared, you get a counter on it, and then if it will be destroyed by battle, you can remove the counter. So you can send it in on kind of suicide runs with Mosquito on the field, so your opponent's taking the damage rather than you, and you can then gain the counter and then remove it with Power of the Guardians to keep Antjaw alive. I've mentioned, there's 2 Scrapline Scarecrow in here. This is kind of one of Ollie's favourite cards, and it's a nice bit of kind of more attack-based disruption. You can add any normal trap you want in here, and I'm sure it will run fine. The idea was that it was going to be a kind of budgety build, and so that's why we've thrown that in there. And I've not mentioned Miracle Synchro Fusion. You won't use it that often. You're more often than not actually going to be using some other effect to discard the spell from Landois than actually using it. But if you do get it off, excellent card. You can basically synchro summon using your already deceased Beast Embarkian and bring out. You're probably not wanting to, Gaius Trio isn't the best card. But it isn't once per turn, which is nice. But you do need to have a hand advantage in order to keep negating the cards your opponent has. Exterio, obviously, is your one of choice. So this lets you remove the play card in your graveyard and send the top card of your deck to the graveyard to negate their effect. So it just continuously feeds itself as long as you've got one thing in the graveyard to kickstart you going. Your opponent's spells and traps are redundant. Yeah, the rest of the extra deck, I've added in Leo Drake just because it's in Naturia, and sometimes we're in a situation where you need to just overpower a monster, so that's in there. Garden Rose Maiden, can be useful for special summoning, like Black Rose Dragons and things like that, which were in this deck. I'd highly recommend having that in there. If you do have the Black Rose cards, throw those into your extra deck as well. If you don't, you can just add in generic synchros, generic links, whatever, fill out the extra deck with those. Okay, well, given that this is a budget build, there should be a really good chance that we can make it in Master Duel and test out how it plays. Obviously, it's not going to be super meta, and it's designed to be a pure Naturia build, but I think it stands a good chance of locking down common decks in Master Duel like Sky Strikers. I've only used this in the actual TCG and online tournaments for the TCG, but in theory it should play out exactly the same. So with that, I will see you for the next video here on the Johnny Scarecrows channel.